I'm Bill with Tandem Cross, making good guns great. Before I get started, let me remind you to please like and share this video on whatever social media platform you found it on, to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and if you're on YouTube, to please click subscribe and the notification bell so that whenever we upload new videos, you find out right away. Now on to the good stuff. Pretty much every spring in a firearm should be treated as a wearable part. As it gets used, it compresses and decompresses, and over time that causes the springs to lose their strength and wear out and need to be replaced. Those springs can also get clogged with dirt and debris or get rusty, and while good cleaning practices can delay the inevitable, it is inevitable that they will eventually wear out. You can also lose the springs pretty easily. By design, springs are under a lot of pressure, and if you're not careful when you're disassembling a firearm, those springs can go launching into the great beyond, never to be seen again. The recoil spring in the bolt of a Ruger PC carbine is no different. Just by virtue of being part of the bolt, it gets a lot of work and a lot of debris built up around it every time you shoot. It is on the larger side as far as springs you find in guns go, but that means it's under more pressure and is going to fly farther if you lose control of it. Still very possible to lose track of this and never see it again. Luckily, Tandem Cross now offers a replacement recoil spring for the Ruger PC carbine. Our replacement spring is made from rocket wire for superior performance. It's 20% stronger than the stock spring, which is ideal for those of you shooting suppressed or shooting higher powered cartridges. The ends of the spring are also ground flat, which helps minimize spring buckling and ensures even transfer of the recoil forces. Also, we color our recoil springs red, partly because it looks cool, but also because it makes them easier to recognize next to the gray stock springs. Installing your new red recoil spring is pretty simple, and it doesn't require any special tools to complete. So let me show you how it's done.
To do this install, you will need a 5/32 Allen wrench, a small punch, and if you're using an upriser chassis like I am, you will need a 3/16 Allen wrench. And we also recommend eye protection. To start, as always, make sure your firearm is clear and safe. Then you can lock the bolt back and pull this lever forward to remove the barrel. Then you can release the bolt. Next, we'll have to remove the receiver from the chassis. For me, that involves taking the hive grip off the upriser. Then, I'll use the 5/32 Allen wrench to loosen these two screws at the rear and front of the chassis. On a stock chassis, they are captured. You don't need to remove them all the way. Loosen those screws up, and then you can take the receiver out of the chassis. Use your punch to pop out these two pins that will allow you to remove the trigger assembly. Then you'll want to remove any charging handles that you might have on your firearm. And now you can pull on this buffer here and slide the whole bolt, buffer, and recoil spring out of the receiver. Like so. So here's the recoil spring. To get at it, we'll need to compress the spring by pushing it down on the buffer. The spring can be quite stiff, so be careful. You'll have to take this retaining clip off. Just slides right off the top of that rod. Then very carefully let the pressure off that spring and remove the buffer and slide the spring off the rod. Set all that aside and grab your new red spring. thread that back onto the spring rod. And I usually tip it upright for this next step of compressing the spring so that the spring rod pokes out the end. Then I'll replace the buffer on the end of that rod. Make sure the rounded face of the buffer is facing away from the spring as you do this so that it sits back in the receiver correctly. Then holding the buffer down, you'll have to replace the retaining clip. The retaining clip has this little cutout on it, and that's what the round tip of the spring rod sits in. So make sure that you've got that aligned correctly. Once it's on, you can let the pressure off, and everything should stay together if you've done it correctly. Now you can start rebuilding your PC carbine. First, put the bolt back in. You'll have to compress the spring slightly one more time to get it to fit. Now turn it on its side and you can reattach any charging handles you had on it. Grab your trigger group housing, set that back in the rear of the receiver and replace the 2 cross pins. Then grab your chassis and set the receiver back in. Screw your 2 screws back in. Make sure you alternate so that they tighten up evenly. Then I have to put the grip back on my upriser. And then you can replace your barrel. Make sure the bolt seems like it's working correctly, and then you are done. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions or suggestions about this video, be sure to let me know in the comments. And don't forget to click like and subscribe and that little notification button so that you are the first to know whenever we upload new videos. You can also find us elsewhere on the internet like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And of course, you can find our products at www.tandemkross.com. See ya!